From the deserts of Sonora to the Arctic tundra, indigenous peoples are at the front lines of climate change.
We are very strongly impacted. We already live in a hot, dry climate, but we've seen drought, we've seen increasing heat. We're now reaching levels that it's almost hard to grow food in the summer, and also the rainfall doesn't come at the same time. That impacts many species, plant and animal species that are part of our indigenous traditional food systems.
These challenges felt by indigenous communities across the globe. Rising seas, extreme weather, and the loss of ancestral lands threaten their culture and way of life.
We've been feeling the impacts of climate change for decades, and so a lot of our traditions and culture are interwoven with our environment, and so the impacts of climate change might not be felt culturally for other maybe urban cultures, but for us, climate change is literally the death to our language, our culture, our people.
In the Arctic, climate shifts are particularly dramatic. The only indigenous people in Europe, the Sami in Finland, feel particularly threatened.
The snow is melting there, ice are melting there. It's much more 2.5 to 3 Celsius degrees warmer than it has been before. So, for example, now there will be minus 30 degrees, but now it's plus, and we don't know how we don't have snow. So it's a very big issue for the reindeer herders in my area, because I'm also a reindeer herder.
At COP29, indigenous leaders are calling for full recognition of their rights in climate negotiations. With COP30 set to take place in the Brazilian Amazon, the urgency has never been greater.
The main issue for indigenous people, defended by the Brazilian government, is the direct access to finance. Indigenous peoples cannot be the ones that are most impacted and not receiving finance to continue their lives. So for COP29, the expectation is that they can advance and ensure direct access to the finance for indigenous people, so that by COP30, we can start talking about implementation.
As COP29 wraps up, indigenous peoples who preserve 80% of the world's biodiversity and 36% of intact forest landscapes call for recognition and action.